Chris and Shawn here with WoodBridge Worship, coming to you today from the great outdoors with your Comfort Food Devotional. We're going to be talking to you today about climbing spiritual mountains. Back in February, Shawn and I were so honored to get to go on a men's-only trip to the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma. Check out this video and see what we did.
So are we ready? Let's go.
We ask you to think about that question, why are you here?
These mountains will be a mirror that reflects our actions, our motives, who we are, and we'll see things from a perspective that maybe we've never seen them before. We'll see our Creator in a new way. You'll see your brothers in a different light. But most importantly, that mirror will give a reflection of a clear vision of the man that you are created to be.
A lot of people, they try to avoid the problem. Take those problems head on. Face the giant.
My life as a servant is not my own, but it's about Him and it's not about me.
The man of God is now the man who is very strong. A man of God is a man who God lives in and can do His work through. Is your desire to be a man of God?
Man, just watching that video again gives me flashbacks. That was such a memorable event, and we're so glad that we got to go on that trip. We brought back 11 things with us from that trip, and then we thought that we would share them with you on today's Comfort Food Devotional. If you want to climb spiritual mountains in your life, the first thing that you have to do is you have to have a desire to do so. Shawn, what made you want to go on that trip?
Well, you asked me, and I had some kind of sinking feeling that it seemed like something I needed to do just to challenge myself. And apparently everybody that went on that trip, all 100 guys, they apparently didn't know why they wanted to do it either. In fact, the first night, as we set off in the darkness, one of the leaders said, you know, a lot of you probably don't have an exact reason of why you're here. You don't know that yet. So tonight is going to be about figuring out what are you doing here and what's the purpose of that. So I don't think we all knew for sure starting into it, but by the end of it, I think it was pretty clear.
Yeah, I think I went on that trip just for something to do, and I didn't really know what to expect going into that because I've never actually, gone on a trip like that before. So the first thing that you got to do if you want to overcome those spiritual mountains in your life is you have to have a desire to do so. A lot of people out there are searching for something more in life, and you got to get to a point in your life where you say, all right, God, I'm tired of doing things my own way. I'm willing to follow you, and that's whenever change can start to happen. Check out John chapter 14, verse 23. Jesus answered, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him." So the first thing you want to do if you want to overcome the spiritual mountains is you have to have a desire to do so. The second thing that you have to do in order to overcome the spiritual mountains in your life is you have to step outside of your comfort zone. And maybe some of y'all are like me. I'm kind of an introvert, and going on a trip with complete strangers is not something that I would normally do. Shawn, how did you have to step out of your comfort zone on this trip?
Like I said, it's not really the type of thing that I usually do, and I tried to do a lot of research on the website of the company that we went with to try to get some kind of idea of, how far we're going to go, what's the physical limitations of it, and there was nothing to be found on their website, and I think that was by design just for this, so you just had to trust the process and just throw kind of caution to the wind and just have faith that you can make it in whatever they're going to throw at you. So that was kind of a big deal for me, not knowing how far I was going to have to go or what I was going to have to endure, not being such a fitness buff like you. So.
Yeah, Christians, we're called to step out of our comfort zones. Everything that Jesus calls us to do, we can't do that sitting at home on our couch. We've got to step out of our comfort zones. We have to seek justice, defend the helpless, and serve the poor. And whether you're comfortable or not with God's commands, we're going to be challenged to speak up and be uncomfortable sometimes. Jesus wants us to be willing and obedient and be able to follow wherever he leads us to go. Check out Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. It says, "Haven't I commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." The third thing that you have to do in order to overcome the spiritual mountains in your life is you have to train.
Like I said, I don't run 1,000 miles a year like you, and I worked out on my little treadmill bike for about 2 weeks leading up to it, hoping that would help. And early into the first full day, I realized I hadn't trained nearly enough. So, I paid for it pretty dearly.
Yeah, just like just any kind of athlete, they're required to submit themselves to rigorous training in order to compete at the highest level. Christians have to do the same. If you're out of shape spiritually, then you're going to be defeated. Check out 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. It says, "But have nothing to do with pointless and silly myths. Rather, train yourself in godliness." The fourth thing that you got to do in order to overcome the spiritual mountains in your life is you have to be prepared.
So even though I didn't train properly and I wasn't in the greatest fitness shape for the ordeal, I definitely prepared. And I probably brought more gear and clothing in my backpack than anybody else there did. And they all kind of took note of it pretty early, that my pack was probably 10 pounds heavier than everyone else's. But as much stuff as I brought with us, or with me, I still wasn't prepared for what came the first night. And so we started hiking about 10 p.m. on the first night on a Thursday, right? Thursday night. And so we walked through one small river. It only took 20 seconds to cross, but then it took us about 30 to 45 minutes with getting dressed and undressed, going through this deeper river. And then it got down to about 20 degrees that night, and so we were trying to somehow fall asleep out in the middle of the woods, freezing and wet. So that was definitely a curveball for us.
The Bible contains God's words and will for our lives. It's our nourishment. It's kind of like our instruction manual. So when we read our Bibles, it helps us become stronger. Check out 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. "All Scripture is inspired by God and is profitable for teaching, for rebuking, for correcting, for training in righteousness." The next thing that we have to do in order to climb these spiritual mountains in our life is we have to remove distractions.
So there's a very short and specific pack list on what we could take on this trip. And, so there's small first aid and some clothing and things like that, but absolutely no food unless it was required by your diet. And we had to leave all of our cell phones, cameras, watches, all of that stuff behind so we wouldn't be distracted. And that at first it was kind of, annoying that you couldn't pull up Facebook or whatever, during the 4 hours we couldn't sleep that first night. But by the end of the trip, I think we're all glad that we didn't have, those kind of distractions.
Absolutely. As Christians, we have to remove any kind of hindrances that would impede our spiritual growth. And whenever we remove these distractions from our lives, we become quiet and still enough for God to speak to us and us to be able to hear it. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 says, "No one can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." In order to climb the spiritual mountains in your life, you have to overcome obstacles.
Now this was a big one for me. It was one of the things that I worried most about going into it, not knowing what we were going to face. And once I got there and saw where we were going to go and the physical mountains we were going to have to climb, there were some physical obstacles that were really daunting. And I really didn't think I was going to be able to get past them. So I had to overcome those physical obstacles.
Yeah, life gets hard. if y'all don't already know that, things could be going well one minute and just be totally crazy the next. However, with God, sometimes your biggest setbacks can become your biggest comebacks. We have to fully believe that God is in control and that He has a plan for our lives. Check out James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. It says, "Consider it a great joy, brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." If you enjoyed those first 6 tips to overcome spiritual mountains in your life, then you want to be sure to tune in Thursday for the conclusion of this. We'll see you then.